Good evening, everybody. This is Toot Sweet Social Club, and we hope that you're going to be watching right now and tweeting your questions to @TootSocial, because we've got a great show that's all about two of my very favorite things, steak and Cabernet. Correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Who doesn't love some nice juicy red meat with a big juicy red wine? So tonight the show is also all about Robert Craig Winery, and we do have here with us today Robert Craig, Bob Craig himself, as well as James Beard award-winning chef Greg Cole, owner of Celadon here in Napa, as well as Cole's Chop House. And we also have Elton Slone, who is the general manager of Robert Craig Winery, and their illustrious winemaker, Stephen Webb. So, you know,
Tebb.
Tebb. Excuse me. This is live. I just made a flub. Okay, so Stephen Tebb. I'm sorry, Stephen. Yes.
So you've been called worse.
I'll do better tonight, I promise.
His uncle's name is Dell.
Is Dell.
Oh.
Nice. Well, I see we've got some bottles of Affinity here in front of us. Do you guys want to tell us a little bit about what's coming up with Affinity and why we're here tonight?
Well, the point of it is I thought it would be really great. Our wine club members tend to get their shipments and put the wine away and call us up about 15 years after they get the shipment and say, you know, I just had your, 2004 Affinity or 2003 Affinity. It's fantastic. But in the Napa Valley here, where space is limited in the restaurant community, as Greg can tell you, we often have big red wines with a beautiful steak when they're young. And so what I thought we would do is I would challenge Greg to a smackdown outside, cooking his steak. Greg will tell you about his history in Napa Valley, but a longtime supporter of the Craig. And on his list, I know, Greg, that you don't have infinite storage. You don't have the ability to keep, every vintage of Robert Craig ever made. So when the old one's out, the new one comes in. And I thought it would be really fun to taste some 2010 Affinity Cabernet Sauvignon, which is coming up in the club shipment in March. And that will be followed by, and then we're going to try it with the 2008 and 2009 vintage at the same time. Once I go defeat Greg in the land of steak cooking on the grill.
Right.
Wow.
It's kind of like my high school football team taking on the Baltimore Ravens out there. Greg is kicking my ass resoundingly.
I don't think so.
Are we the judges?
That's right. The judge and the jury.
Right.
So that is the steak.
Oh, well, I think I can deal with that.
So we have Stephen Tebb here, the winemaker at Robert Craig since 2009 vintage, and he can tell us about the challenges in the weather and what's been happening with 2009, 2010. And then Bob and Greg go way back in the Napa Valley when Greg, really had the only fine dining restaurant. Everybody used to get to Napa and just head straight up to what they thought was the start of Napa Valley and Yountville.
Yeah.
So I thought it'd be great to have Bob and Greg discuss the wines after we cook some steaks.
Absolutely. Well, first though, and I don't know if you guys need to step away yet to go do that, but first though, I thought we'd hear a little bit from you, Bob, about the beginnings of the winery. Tell us about how this all started.
Well, I got started in 1978. I was... my wife and I were living in San Francisco and had an opportunity to taste a lot of Napa wine. Really fell in love with Napa wine. Really wanted to find a way into the wine business. It wasn't temporary insanity because I've been doing it for 35 years. And so I finally, another guy and I were working for an asset management company. We did a study on vineyards, farm partnership investment. We said, why don't we do this ourselves? And so it took us 2 years. We put together a group of vineyards up on Mount Veeder.
Wow, Mount Veeder, a terrific spot for Cabernet here in Napa Valley. Absolutely. And I understand your wife, Lynn, has also been, very closely involved at the winery as well. And so since you're up there on Mount Veeder, we're talking hillside vines, correct?
Hillside, yeah. We do a Mount Veeder Cabernet Sauvignon, a Howell Mountain Cabernet Sauvignon, Spring Mountain Cabernet Sauvignon. This year we made just a little bit of Diamond Mountain. So we're pretty much covering all the mountains. And I think really, I've always really loved mountain wines. I just love the concentration you get, the depth of flavor, the structure. I just think they're extraordinary wines. Much more it's much more difficult to grow, and you get less production, so it's a real commitment to be in the mountains.
Absolutely.
And Lori Ness knows that. She's here today. They have Vinoci Vineyards, very, very wonderful wine.
Excellent, wonderful.
And the wine we're having tonight, I might point out, Affinity, which is, since you're receiving it in the club shipments for a lot of you, this wine is grown on the base of Mount George. So
oh, really?
Yeah, so
I used
all
to
of the
live
wine.
near the base of Mount George.
Oh.
I don't know how many of you know where this is, but it's definitely on the east side of Napa, sort of near Atlas Peak area, kind of. But
That's right.
you know, south.
Yeah.
But
We don't even know where it is if people start questioning closely
No, I'm just
about
trying
the
to
wine.
give
You know, we're like,
context,
Mount
you know,
George,
for
stop
people.
bothering me.
Yeah, but just for context. So yeah, good.
Well, Greg, should we go out and
Is it time?
grab those
Yeah.
doggies
All right, pull them off the
doggies
grill.
off the grill?
Yeah.
No dueling. Play nice,
Yeah.
boys. Play nice.
There's knives over there. There's some flames. I don't know. I think we're going to be okay. But
I think someone better go out and watch them just to be
Yeah,
sure
okay.
it's,
That's
you
right.
know,
So
under
we're-
control.
we're going to head out to the barbecue. We'll be right back. We'll come back with some steaks, and we'll see how we did. I think one of the things that my little secret or my advantage that I have over Elton, perhaps besides the fact that I'm much better looking,
I love it. The snack talk has begun.
is that like great wine. I mean, at Cole's Chop House we have great beef, and you know you can't make great wine with mediocre grapes. And so the grapes that Robert Craig farms and harvests and makes into wine, when you have a higher level of raw ingredients, it makes it that much easier. And so you know the steaks that I have, my steaks tonight, we have a USDA prime New York steak, 21-day dry aged.
Oh.
And then we have a certified Angus beef filet. And these are steaks that when Elton jumps in his car and drives to the grocery store, you can't buy. You know, you just can't go to the store and buy these.
I have certified Molly Stones.
Oh,
Sounds
okay.
like an
Well,
unfair
not so bad.
cook-off here,
Yeah.
a little unfair.
So, I mean, one of the secrets to great steak cooking is really, like great winemaking, is the quality of the raw ingredients. And like the Cabernet grapes that you grow on the mountains, you know, the steaks that we get at our restaurants are perhaps sometimes a little bit higher quality level than what you can find in the grocery store. Unless you have a butcher that you have a relationship with, you know.
Well,
and we won't go into that.
No, but maybe
Yeah.
you can give us some
My
tips
girlfriend.
because I've heard that there are maybe shortcuts to giving your steak that dry age
There is,
effect.
yeah, and I mean, and just a real simple one is that, you know, like the steak that Elton picked up today looked good. Marbling is pretty good. He has a beautiful porterhouse. One of the things that happens in grocery stores or in butcher shops is that you get steaks that are too fresh. You know, you want steaks to have a little bit of age to them. Usually, if you're in the grocery store and they put that little sticker in, 20% off today because the steak's turning a little bit brown, that's usually a better steak. Yeah,
Oh,
you're going to save a little bit of money,
Good tip.
but as cattle are slaughtered and they hang and they're cut into steaks, you want a little bit of time for that aging because it breaks down the proteins and you end up with a more tender steak. So really, I mean, up to a point, if you see that little discounted price, I mean, if it's growing green mold, maybe you don't want it. But usually,
It's 80% off.
Usually, yeah, if it's 80% off, it's a bad sign. But if it's 20% off, that's a good sign. And so that's the steak you get. So really, sometimes you'll get a steak and it has beautiful marbling and it's bright red and it's really fresh. And you look at it, it should be a good steak, but when you cut into it, it's like bubble gum. It's because it's too fresh. Beef, any kind of meat, needs a little bit of time to break down.
Yeah, that's
So that kind of thing. So
Fascinating.
so
It is like
aging.
wine.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Aging.
you
Yeah.
talked about, breaking down the proteins
Right.
and just like wine. I mean, tannins can be too aggressive early on. It needs to age. It just needs to age.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
It's just
true.
like beef. I mean, it's amazing.
It needs air. It needs the same thing. Yeah.
Now
it needs the time.
Same rule does not apply to fish. So don't do
Yeah.
that with your fish. Fish is different.
Well,
Or
yeah.
house guests.
Yeah. Yeah. For house guests.
Nevertheless.
We're gonna head outside to the barbecue. We're gonna come back with some steaks, and we're gonna, I think, cut them up and
Ooh,
perhaps.
perfect. Is there going to be a little live
perhaps
action cooking going on out there?
Well, I think is there a video? There's a camera. I think there's
Well,
a
we
camera.
don't wanna
out
crowd
there.
Oh,
together.
perfect.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
We'll be
well,
right
we're going to
back.
be keeping an
All right,
eye on
okay.
you for sure. That's wonderful.
Yeah,
So
looks really great
maybe
talking
Bob
about-
and Stephen can talk about, where Affinity comes from.
Yeah, I wanted to
and-
ask.
and
Absolutely.
how it's made.
Come on down, Stephen. Why don't you
Will
scoot
do.
down a little bit closer with us so that we can hear more about the lovely bottles that we have before us of Affinity. And tell us a little bit more about this bottling. We heard a little hint earlier, but give us the background, the real scoop.
The majority of the wine comes from Bob's backyard. I mean, he has
Lucky you.
a beautiful vineyard, and Mount George, just with views, amazing views of Mount George, and this is really the foundation of the Affinity bottling. I'll let Bob talk maybe a little bit about the vineyard and the site and whatnot, and then I can layer in on top of that.
Well, that's a really interesting location. For many years, that area, it's also called Coombsville. I really prefer Mount George.
You're right, it is the Coombsville AVA, which is a relatively new appellation. Yes.
And what was really interesting for many years when there was other land to plant in that valley, the common wisdom for this location was too cool for Cabernet Sauvignon.
Right.
So when everything else got planted, everybody said, well, let's give it a try anyway. And what all of us have discovered is it is a very cool place for Cabernet Sauvignon, but it is warm enough to ripen but it ripens it over a long period of time, which is really ideal. So it turns out to be a really excellent place for Cabernet Sauvignon. And what's always been interesting for me in the wine is, and Stephen will verify this, and I actually heard him talk about it recently. In wine or in grapes, you usually look for some sort of fruit component that you can say, like, black cherry or cassis or whatever. The fruit from this particular vineyard is just really black and dark, and as a standalone wine, it's not really. It's too powerful. But it's such a beautiful blending wine as a basis for the other elements we add to it.
Absolutely.
So tell us, what are the soils like in
very
this particular
rocky.
spot?
It's a hillside vineyard. It's on the hillsides of Mount George, which is very rocky. It's very well drained. The vines struggle. It's a very old vineyard.
So what is the average age of the vine?
20 years.
Okay.
So this vineyard has been there for quite some time and has had the opportunity to really find where the water pockets are and to find the balance. I mean, really, it's all about balance at the end of the day.
Of course.
I mean, whether you're developing a vineyard or managing a vineyard or making a wine, it's all about balance. And the older vineyards tend to find their own balance naturally, right?
Yeah.
And so this vineyard has done that, and it is completely gorgeous. The components that go into this specific vineyard are the structure. They're the framework of the Affinity blend.
Nice.
And when I say blend, I mean blend, because we do indeed add a little bit of Merlot, Petit Bordeaux, Cabernet Franc, and some Malbec as well throughout the Napa Valley, as well as some other Cabernet Sauvignon vineyards throughout Napa Valley. But it is indeed Bob Craig's his vineyard there at the base of Mount George is the structure of Affinity. And I think, and just sort of roughly going through these wines, one by one is like, oh my God, they are so similar. I mean,
despite the vintage.
I know, despite the vintage differences,
so
and there's drastic differences in each vintage. I mean, 2008, it was a little tough and 9 fleshy, and 2010, just the structure. It's gorgeous, but boy, can you just not see Bob Craig's vineyard in each and every one of these wines?
Well, I can't wait to taste them, and I have to say it is smelling amazing in here right now. I wish you could all smell what we're smelling, correct?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the aroma of
and
steak. I'm just like, I feel like it's a tease, they've set them down beside me and I'm like, being lured over like, Pavlov's dog.
Yes, we've got the wine and the steak. It's all starting to come together.
Keeping our attention in that direction.
Exactly, we're like, steak,
that's what's wonderful about what T was saying about the relationship between steak and wine. The wine makes you want steak, and steak makes you want wine.
It makes your mouth water. Absolutely. So,
enough words.
we want to see this. Look at these.
Greg can show. I'm going to watch Greg to figure out how you actually carve a steak.
Well.
Great. Yeah.
Carefully.
Tips.
Yeah. So this is the New York from Cole's Shop House, and this is USDA, again, 21-day dry aged. USDA prime. We get this from Allen Brothers in Chicago. It's fantastic.
Now, ordinarily we would tint these and let it rest for a little while longer before coming off the grill.
But this is
God,
gonna work out good.
Wow,
we won't let you. That's why you can't do that.
I'm gonna try DA's knife here and see.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
At Cole's Chop House, you just tear it with your hands.
We're all servants here at Too Social. We provide the steaks. Whatever you need.
All right.
The
So
knife.
this is the 21-day dry age. I'm going to just move this up here for a second. Slide this out. And I was going to do a little bit, I guess, when we sit back down about how to tell when a steak is done and how, that little secret about that $25,000 culinary school secret. This steak, the dry aging process, definitely, as I'm carving this, kind of creates sort of a mushroomy sort of, it has a almost like really light cheesy sort of smell, and that's what you want.
A light what smell?
Well, cheese, like a little bit of a cheese smell almost. Versus the fillet that doesn't have that at all, because this fillet is not dry aged.
I've never heard that before. Interesting. I'm going to look for that.
Mushrooms.
Cheese in my steak.
Well, it just has that. It just has a little bit. I'm going to do this. I'm going to flip this around. We'll go this way.
Elton over there is sneaking a taste, I
Yeah,
think.
that's-
I know you all. This is not fair. I don't know.
That's why Elton's getting all the dirty looks.
There was a renegade piece on the corner.
Oh, yeah.
You were afraid that,
Yeah, I was gonna jump off.
it wasn't going to stay on there anyway.
When we first opened the Chop House and we were introducing dry aged steaks to the clientele, it used to be in America that all steaks were aged, and they had that flavor, that sort of mushroomy, a little bit wild kind of flavors, and people were sort of, I don't know, taken aback. They were surprised by it. And, we've sort of educated our clientele, like what a dry aged steak tastes like now, because it just has a little different flavor to it.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's something I love, I look for. I just absolutely, I think it's amazing. But it's not for everybody. And so...
what are some great tips that we should have when we're cooking a steak at home?
Cooking a steak. Well, so, I mean, what I've done here versus what Elton has done is...
I get a little snack talk. Did you catch that,
right.
Jeff?
No.
Elton, what have you done?
Can I carve this? Is that right?
And keep in mind that the only reason Greg is
I think we
chopping
need
those
some plates.
bits a little bit smaller is just because we have a studio audience that is incredibly hungry right now.
Okay.
So we've been cooking steak and
Our mouths
everybody's
are watering.
salivating, so otherwise he would lay it out a little
So
bit.
this is what Elton brought, and this actually is a good-looking steak. This is a porterhouse. It's also called a T-bone. The difference between a porterhouse and a T-bone is that on a porterhouse, the fillet side has to be, it's 1.5 inches across, so it has to be bigger. So as the butcher is cutting these steaks, at a certain point they're T-bones, and as the fillet portion of it gets bigger, it becomes a porterhouse. That's the only difference between a porterhouse and a T-bone.
Interesting.
A porterhouse has to have a certain size to it of the fillet side. So when you order a porterhouse, you get the fillet, which is this piece here, and you also get the New York, or those strip loin.
Interesting.
And so it's a great steak. I'm a New York guy. I like New York steak. So I don't usually wouldn't order I would prefer a porterhouse, a T-bone, because I'd rather have more of the New York than the fillet side. But everybody's different. I mean, in our restaurant, the fillet is definitely the most popular.
Sure.
Well, you'll notice that I have a lot more seasoning on my piece of meat. Very good one, bought at my local market. But with Greg, he just sprinkles a little angel dust over the top. Or salt and pepper. Call it what you will.
Angel dust, or maybe kosher salt.
Or kosher salt.
Yeah.
Not to say what.
We understand.
Pretty much the same thing. I think with
Society has moved on.
With really high quality beef, what we want to taste the beef. And so, we don't put a lot of spices on because in the seasonings on our steaks, because we don't want to hide the flavor of the beef.
And so, Elton, what did you use on your steak?
Well, I just used some ground garlic, salt, pepper, what is that damn?
Angel dust.
And cumin. I was like, what's the damn herb that always makes the pizza taste weird?
Yeah.
But cumin.
Cumin?
Yeah.
You put cumin on your pizza? That's why it would
right.
taste weird. Yeah.
But so at any rate, that's a pretty good looking steak.
Yeah, no, you did a nice job here. It looks really good. So yeah.
But as with the taste of your steak, it's just amazing. And for people that have never been to Cole's Chop House, being a Cabernet house, I have to say that around the country, I do so many meals in steakhouses. I always go into whatever the great steak place in, whatever market, if it Sparks in New York City or Peter Luger, and I always go in saying, fish, and I'll have a ribeye medium rare. Because I love a good steak. But the thing that's really I find different about your restaurants, Greg, is you have this great local ingredient base, and so at Celadon, but particularly at Cole's for a steakhouse, it seems like you just have this incredible array. The sides are always so beautiful. I mean, when corn is in season, you have this beautiful fresh corn.
Right.
You know, I go to these steakhouses and you order a tomato, you order a tomato and onion salad, and it's, wow, you could probably hammer a nail with the tomato. It's more white than red. Right. And so I have to give you some kudos and say, when I go to your place, it's not just a steak, but it's all about a great restaurant. And by the way, it's a steakhouse.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, and the story of Cole's, and this kind of goes with a Cabernet. My first cooking job was at the Hungry Hunter in Thousand Oaks. It's no longer there. I think it's been replaced by something else. But the Hungry Hunter in Thousand Oaks, kind of a
CVS.
medium scale steakhouse. But at that time, in the late 70s, early 80s, it was one of the best restaurants in Thousand Oaks. And, moved around the country, cooked French food, cooked Italian food. I moved to Napa in 1985, and I kept wondering why there wasn't a Ruth Chris, why there wasn't Sullivan's, why there wasn't, there just wasn't a great steakhouse. And so I spent some time working in the wine industry, spent some time cooking Italian food, Mediterranean food, Pacific Rim-inspired food. And Celadon, my first restaurant, is definitely, a Pacific Rim kind of international cuisine. But when the spot came available for Cole's, I was sitting there for years thinking, why isn't, Ruth's Chris here?
It's
Why
a natural match.
All these Cabernet producers,
Napa Valley Cabernet.
And so I finally said, okay, if no one else is going to do it, I'll do it. So we did it. So 13 years ago, we opened Cole's Chop House. And I'm glad we did. It's been a good thing.
So are we.
Yeah. But it just is, it is a classic American steakhouse. But like you said, in the wine country where we have this great ingredients, we have great mushrooms, great local tomatoes, and watercress hydroponically grown in Sausalito. And it is all the things that
hydroponically grown in Sausalito. Usually it's not watercress.
Yeah. So that's right. So all those things that make the restaurants in the Napa Valley so good, that the quality of the ingredients, we've just translated those into a steakhouse. At Celadon, we're international. At Cole's, we're a steakhouse. So.
And also, it's a chop house, so there are other really wonderful meats.
Yes,
right.
exactly.
Yeah, we do a great pork chop. We do great lamb. A variety of steaks, fish. Mm-hmm. And actually, it really is sort of funny. We have a lot of vegetarians that come into Cole's because if you are a vegetarian, it really is, with all the side dishes, it's really not a bad place to go. Because you could have a baked potato, and you could have hash browns, you could have wild mushrooms, you could have broccoli, asparagus. There's lots of options. So it is funny. I never thought that would be the case when we opened a steakhouse, that we would be getting lots of vegetarians in, but we do. And we feed them. We like them. They're fine.
You don't get a lot of vegetarians wanting that salad at Sparks Steakhouse in New York.
Right. Probably not. Yeah, probably not. So do we want to sit down over here?
Yeah, can we sample? Should we move to the table?
I thought we would try the steak with different wines because, again, Bob and I and Stephen, we all do all these wine dinners, and Rachel and Jeff on our direct side, and they always want to say, well, let's do this with some buffalo or some quail, and I'm like, can't we just keep this simple and do it with a steak? So I thought it'd be great to taste three vintages of Affinity.
Your friends are over there.
That's right. That's why we're waiting. 3 vintages of Affinity with this steak. Yeah. So we're going to see what steak holds court here, but from the taste of it, I think, Greg, you're already
I don't know.
You're the pregame favorite.
You know what? Your steak looks fine, so you never know. There can always be an upset, right?
That's right.
Here.
Let's get to
Can we get a napkin, perhaps?
Stop talking before we eat.
Yeah, I was surprised with that thing in front of Leslie over there that we have a couple of grain of steak.
Okay.
So we're just going to carve.
All right.
These are kind of big plate pieces here, but
we'll
just be sort of cavemen, I guess.
That's right.
Perfect.
Maybe carve that a little.
And so what's the first wine in our glass? What do we have?
The 2008 Affinity.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And then, so it's vintage. As I was saying earlier, it's really about, somewhat vintage variation, but the variation that I'm seeing is quite subtle. I think the wine is really consistent throughout. Again, it's a testament to Bob Craig's vineyard and his viticultural skill that he's doing there at the base of Mount George.
Well, the 2008 is a testament to my viticultural skill and the women that worked in the office at that time, because the winemaker before Stephen ended his career along with the life of our company truck just south of the gate on August 25th. And so Stephen, of course, said, I can't start until January. And so we were forced to just, I guess it's like when your sous chef leaves when the chef de cuisine leaves on a Saturday night, Greg, you just make do. But I'll never forget the 2008 vintage because it was freezing cold up on Howell Mountain. It gave me an appreciation for what you guys do up there in those freezing cold rubber boots with water on them for hours at a time. And I was covered in yellow jacket stings and grape juice on the phone with distributors saying, hey, you haven't picked up your wine. And they said, well, the stock market's down another 1,500 points today, so I'm not picking up anything. So that vintage, the 2008 wine, to me, when it started out, we didn't know how to operate the press, so we squeezed it a little too hard. And the wine started out very tannic. And I think when Rachel comes up here in a minute, when Greg checks out, it was a vintage where we really tried to talk people into a second case of wine because the wine was so tight. And it's amazing tasting this wine here now that it has just unfolded and it's become linear with the 10 and the 11. So that's my take on it. But 2008, anybody that has some of this in your cellar, I want you to raise a glass to the women that worked in our office at that time. The employees all got out there and made that damn wine along with our consulting winemaker. And it gave me an appreciation, Stephen, for sure, about what you do.
So we have the 2008, and Greg is cutting us the New York. Is that correct?
That is the New York, absolutely. This is the Cole's Chop House in New York.
This is the New York.
And the wine is beautiful. It's just, the affinity for me of all the Robert Craig wines is, and I don't know if is that Coombsville, the base of Mount George? Is that Coombsville appellation? For me, it's more restaurant friendly. The Mount Veeder wine is amazing. Mr. Craig, I'll serve you here. Mount Veeder is amazing, but to me, Mount Veeder is always a grape or a wine that, benefits from the cellar. Get your wine club shipment, put it away, drink. I don't know if you guys say, drink the affinity now, put the Mount Veeder away, or if they're all stylistically similar.
No.
I've always found Mount Veeder to be something I want to let rest in the cellar a little bit longer.
Sure.
And this affinity, this is the 2008, but this wine upon release for me, and as someone who has a restaurant, I don't want to necessarily cellar wines for years and years because I want to sell them and try to get some cash flow going. So the affinity is great for me. This is the perfect wine.
There's something to this, the texture and the taste, aged steak going with an aged wine. Is there something to that? Is that what you're saying?
I think that works. Yeah, I think we don't get opportunities to drink older wines that much. And granted, this 2008 is not even that old.
Right. It's
not a current release, but it's not. It's still youthful. But it definitely is soft and pretty and elegant. And with this steak, it's good.
Yeah, and your restaurant who orders this is going to be, happy to pair this along with the New York steak. So, it works out perfectly.
And Affinity has been a wine traditionally that it's always cellared as well as the mountain wines. The ageability is incredible because of the acid base. It's a cooler climate property, very rocky soil. But when you add the Merlot, the Petit Bordeaux, the Cabernet Franc, it really, the Malbec, it really helps the wine to soften and unlock the Cabernet Sauvignon in there. And so, to me, this is wine that it's my favorite David and Goliath wine in terms of, I'll take on anybody's $150 in the brown bag with Affinity. It's one of those wines that does, you can see how the wine is soft and beautiful and luscious, but you can see how slowly the 08 is evolving. It's not.
I was going to ask Stephen what the vintage in 08 was like. You mentioned the consistency across vintages for these wines, but what made 08 particularly special?
Well, 2008 was one of those vintages where, things basically went as planned. The yields were lower because early on in the season we had some frost issues.
Sure.
So, in the early springtime there were some frost issues, so yields were low. But the grapes that got past all of that, did just quite well. And I think very structured, very just I think well structured wine.
And Greg, why did you choose to pair the steak that you did with this wine?
I think that there's no rhyme or reason. There's no secret.
Okay.
I mean, I think really good steak and really good Cabernet, really go well together. I like the Affinity for myself for the restaurants because I think it is one that is the most what I call restaurant friendly.
Sure.
I mean, it's a wine that today all three of these wines are just beautiful.
So is that like a 10-case Affinity order we got?
Yeah. Well, that's not exactly what I said, but we could rewind the tape to watch that.
I thought I heard.
Yeah, they're
Well, no, that's good to hear from you because there's so many Napa producers. A lot of people want to place on your list, I'm sure, and so that means something.
Well, and so we look at people come to us with lots and lots of wines. I mean, and there's a lot of producers in the Napa Valley making a lot of great Cabernets. Part of it for me now, because I've been here a long time, is the people. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know if I think about the history of the Napa Valley and the hillsides, there was two guys who did it. I mean, really, there was William Hill and there was Robert Craig. And those two guys, one of them was right here. I think people looked at the valley floor and planted and planted and planted, and people weren't paying attention to the hillsides.
Right.
Except for these two guys who, for whatever reason, they decided that we should maybe go up there. And what we found with hillside fruit, now we know, we didn't know it in the early 70s maybe, is that really intense wines, really interesting, the vines struggle up there, and we get great results from them.
Yeah,
and, and Robert Craig, I remember meeting Bob when he was planting the vineyards for the Hess collection in the mid-'80s, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, I am old. I know. And I was cooking then, But I mean, they were the ones. Bob was one of those guys who saw the future in the hills.
And why was that, Bob?
Well, it was based on my own experience. The wines I really fell in love with were the mountain wines from Napa Valley, among all the other wines. And what was really interesting to me was that when I was at the Hess collection, I was actually the one who sort of put together the application to make an AVA. And as part of that, we had to do a soil study, of course, and a climatology study, and a history study. And the history part of it showed that when the early settlers came to Napa Valley from Europe, a lot of them, when there was this abundance of land to plant in the valley floor, real easy to plant, deep soil, and some of them actually headed right to the mountain.
Wow.
Because in their own experience, in their own country, you planted the food stuff that you needed to survive on the valley floor, so that pushed the grapes up to the mountain. And they discovered it was a win-win because that's where the best wine came was from the mountain.
Wow, beautiful. Well, we've had some delicious steak. Any thoughts yet? Because we've only had Greg's steak so far.
Right.
And so,
but ours isn't gone yet, so I don't know if we wanted to go. Do we want to go
need to
there?
send this around to the audience too. But I have to say, I tried a piece of my steak and I thought, Greg, you're in big trouble.
Yeah.
Because I thought, man, that is so good. And then, unfortunately, the New York and the filet came out, and I swing that to the dog.
They're pretty
Oh
mouth-watering.
my gosh.
They're pretty, melt in your mouth as well.
Well, you haven't had one of those yet, but that is a delicious steak, and I was thinking, this might be a little too good, and then I had Greg's steak.
And you see the difference between the New York and the filet. You have the filet now.
Mm-hmm.
The New York has that dry aged flavor. I love it. I mean, I love that kind of earthiness, mushroom, and
absolutely. I
hints
can taste
of blue
the
cheese.
mushroom, totally.
It just the dry aging process imparts those flavors.
Sure.
And if you've never had that, we ran into this problem. Like I said, people thought they were sending it back going, the steak is bad. I said, no, it's not bad. This is the way steak used to taste in America. Steak used to be, when we had butchers on our corners, steak used to taste that way because steak was dry aged.
Sure.
And it doesn't happen anymore. Right. And so you have to go to a specialty butcher shop or order online or go to Cole's Chop House to have one. But the difference between the two is big. I mean, that filet just melts in the mouth.
I think
Do we have a caller?
question.
We have a Twitter/text question. I think they tried to tweet and then they texted as well. This is all the way from Dublin, Ireland.
Wow.
Watching live.
Yeah.
Dublin,
And it's
thank
for
you.
Elton. It's maybe more of a comment. I actually don't understand it. Okay, I'm just going to read it. Hey, Slone, Christio Patty from Dublin, McLeod's favorite mutton, beaten with Charolais, and RFC is better. Have a good show. Don't be nervous. And this is from Christopher Poppy,
Oh,
who is
Christopher
watching us in
Poppy.
Dublin right now. So
I love it.
Do you
Hi,
know what that
Christopher, and
Hi, Christopher.
Dublin.
Hi, Christopher.
That's
The-
terrific.
Christopher's the evil Mr. Rogers. I'm sure he's wearing a sweater vest right now and having a few too many.
And what time
And
is
eating his
it?
mutton,
Yeah, and what time is it
obviously.
in Dublin right now anyway? Are the bars, it's 4 a.m.?
Well, there you
Oh,
go.
okay. So the bars are just getting ready to close, right?
Or just opening.
Okay.
Or just opening.
We have the
Okay.
2009 as well, Affinity, correct? And so should we also be taking a taste of that? And you want to tell us a little bit more about 2009?
For sure.
Yeah, sure.
Stephen's first vintage. Right?
Yeah, exactly. My first full-time vintage. I signed on with Robert Craig in 2008, but, was sort of a shadow winemaker during the 08 vintage, and then 09 was, 100% mine. And, of course, I got dealt with a major winter storm in the middle of October, which dumped more than 13 inches of rain on October 13, 14, 15, and then again on the 19th. They sent some more rain our way, which was, while we're used to having some rain during harvest in the Napa Valley, in 2009, we had a major winter storm. But the good thing about that was that up until that point, it was an ideal growing season. And even beyond that point, it was an ideal growing season. And the fact that it was even a cold storm was fine.
Interesting.
It was fine. What it did is it just kind of rinsed everything off,
Right.
and we were able to
Did it allow the grapes to hang a little bit longer?
Yeah, what we did was the things that were ready to harvest before the storm, it didn't force my hand whatsoever. The things that were ready to harvest beforehand, we did, and the things that weren't, we said we're just going to wait. And we've got plenty of work to do in the cellar. We had plenty of wines and things to work through, and we just said we're just going to wait because it's not ready. We got through this storm cycle in the middle and carried on afterwards. And it was, the thing with mountain wines is they come on late.
Sure.
Where a lot of the folks on the valley floor, they're all talking about, oh, we're 30% done, 40% done, 50% done. I'm like, I haven't even started yet. Right? I mean,
Well, and how many days later are
exactly.
you starting?
It's like a month. I mean, it's that late. We're
live audience wants a bite.
Sorry.
Sorry.
This is a live audience. So, but the thing about 2009, and we can talk about 2010 here shortly, was, that little rainstorm, while it sort of threw a little bit of a, hey, wake up, it was a non-event. It was really a non-event because the things that weren't ready before that weren't ready. And after that, we had great weather and things progressed quite nicely. And the 2009 to me is very fleshy and juicy and delicious and has all the structure that Robert Craig Affinity typically has, but maybe, with just some more just flesh and just juiciness.
And what's the difference of the 2010? Why don't we move right into that?
Yeah, let's just jump into that while we're talking about it. 2010 was even a cooler vintage. We had a much cooler growing season early on. We had much more fog early on, whereas on the mountain, we were looking down on Affinity Vineyards in the fog, and up there on Howell Mountain, we're like, boy, it looks foggy down there. I wonder when it's going to burn off. And it didn't burn off until maybe 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And then sure enough, an hour later, the fog came back in again. And that went on well until August, which was abnormal, but that kind of slowed everything down. It just really slowed everything down. But that wasn't necessarily a negative because it allowed the grapes to truly mature. So the tannin, the anthocyanin, so a lot of the color and structure that really is important to Cabernet Sauvignon was given the time that it really needed to fully develop, as opposed to jumping sugars or whatever. You're like, oh my gosh, bricks are getting a little high, and I'm really all about balance, right? I'm all about balance and making sure that we harvest things at the right time. Right. 2010 was actually a really good vintage for us because nature kind of let us harvest when things were really ready.
That's great.
And as a result, we got the full structure, the color, the intensity that we were really after. So, you know, I think the 2009, 2010, 2009 maybe more fleshy, more juicy. 2010 more structured, more elegant. So yeah, each one has got its own characteristic. But I love the fact that Affinity, the characteristic that's unique to Affinity, shines in each one of these vintages and will continue to do so.
Absolutely.
It's kind of like the Anthony Robbins of greatness. I'm feeling like I need to go out and better myself. It's great.
So do we need to make a verdict at this point on the steak? Because I believe we want to bring in Rachel, who's going to talk to us a little bit more too about some of the past shipments. But you know,
well, I think Elton's was good. I mean, I like that little rub that you put on there. It's good.
I did too. I liked the cumin actually. The cumin
Yeah.
actually gave it a really interesting flavor. I thought that was quite pleasing, especially with the wine. It lent itself very nicely to the flavors of the
I'll
wine.
vote for mine though.
I'll tell you, yeah.
But yours, it was good. And you know, it's funny. I'm not used to that sort of flavor mixture, blackened kind of whatever that little secret sauce you had was.
You must disguise the supermarket.
That's right.
Well,
Yeah.
if I might add, if you have to like add cumin or some
Right.
other like kind of
Yeah.
stuff, you're masking something.
Right.
Early, it's all about
Yeah.
the purity. It's all about
That's right.
purity. And from a winemaker's perspective, I want the purity of the fruit. I want the purity of the vineyard to shine through. And clearly, I'm voting for.
Thank you. Well, thank you.
We do have the audience vote.
Oh, the audience vote.
The audience
Yeah.
vote just came in.
Okay.
Yes, and I have to say it was difficult because no one wants to admit they don't want to be revealed. Nobody wants
Yeah.
any
Well,
kind
maybe
of
we
who
don't want to
said
lose
what.
our job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think
right.
it's hands down Chef Greg Cole. Good.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
I have to go back to the restaurant, so you're going to sit in my place.
Of course you do. I'd like to make a toast to Greg.
Oh, Bob
Right.
wants
Yeah.
to make a toast. Very
I want to
quickly.
make a toast to Greg. He's the only restaurateur who would venture into the town of Napa years ago.
16 years ago.
16 years ago,
Yeah.
when there was no place in this town to eat. Anything above a hamburger was just, you couldn't find it. And Greg established this restaurant in a fairly difficult location right on Main Street.
Yeah, fun.
And I thought, boy, Greg's a great guy. I hope he makes it here. and it was so successful. Now he has Celadon and the Trop House, and he really deserves it.
Thank
He's
you,
a
sir.
great chef and a great guy.
Well, thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Now,
Wonderful.
This is our shirt that cannot be purchased at any price.
Oh, it's priceless.
It
It
only
is truly
It
priceless.
is only given to the few that are chosen. So Cabernet Sauvignon elevated, and then the front label, well, you better not zoom in on that too much.
No.
It looks like Robert Craig Winery, but it's our very
Okay.
special, it's our very special.
The very
team.
special limited
That's
edition
right.
shirt. I
We
see
won't
that.
be wearing that around the children's room.
Absolutely not.
As Chris Pappy said in his text, RFC.
RFC. I gotcha.
Yeah.
Now I know. Now I'm part of the inner circle. Thank you very much.
So,
Yeah.
Celadon, 1996, and Robert released his first wines in 95, the 92 vintage. So you guys have been doing this a long time together.
For a few years.
It's an
Yeah.
honor to be on the
Yeah.
on the panel with you, Greg.
Well, absolutely. Well, thanks for having me on, and thanks for letting me cook here in the Toot Sweet Studios. And
Oh my gosh.
thank
our
you for
pleasure.
the taste of wines
No.
too.
Yeah.
delicious wines for sure. So,
Great.
all right,
All right,
okay.
Greg.
All right, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
Greg.
you, Greg.
All right.
Thank you
See
very
my
much.
Bob, Rich.
And welcome, Rachel.
Yes, hello.
Hello. We're so happy to have you join us. This is Rachel Miller, and Rachel is the wine club director.
Yes.
Correct? At the winery.
That's right.
And so we want to hear more from you. You've got some surprises up your sleeve tonight, I understand. But
Well, I understand that none of the real stories have come out about
she's here to dish the dirt.
You've had too much to drink, Rachel.
oh, well, or eat too, because I did sample through all of those, and I even though I voted for Greg Cole, I hope I still have a job tomorrow with Sir
Barely.
Elton.
Somehow, I think
Even
you
though I
will.
love cumin on steak, but some of those cuts are just pretty amazing. So what I'm remembering, we're tasting, this is really fun for me because I haven't tasted the 2008 in maybe 2 years.
Sure.
And so going back and tasting it, then it just brings back a lot of memories of that year when we had lost our winemaker and we were in between winemakers, and it was, how can I say this? We ended up having some of the women from the office going up to help crush and make it happen.
Wow.
Elton,
it was all hands on deck.
Elton learned an awful lot that year. He ended up helping out with crush as well. And, we were all had our fingers crossed. This is going to be we knew the vintage was an awesome vintage, but, it was the, getting through the harvest was a challenge for us. When the wines were released 3 years ago, I guess today, there we are with the 08 Affinity in front of us, and I'm tasting it, getting ready for the wine club release, and I'm saying, this is an angry wine. Yeah. You know what? We are not releasing this right now. And of course, Elton says, of course we're releasing this right now. It's the first wine, at the beginning of the year, we need to get this wine out, get some revenue coming in.
Yeah, no wine before it's time. The bank says it's time.
Exactly. See,
Exactly.
and I'm there like, no.
Anchors.
But you know what? If for those of you out there who are opening this up and tasting it right now, oh my goodness, it is so luscious, and the aromas are just so rich and ripe and fruity. There is no angry. The angry has gone away. The angry has gone away.
It's all pleasure right now. It's all pleasure.
So we were really lucky though with the 2009, hence Stephen entering into the picture, helping with that blend, helping to make it sing. And I remember tasting this just before the club release and saying, okay, this is going to be easy.
Well, I have a question for you, because you were mentioning that these wines can be angry wines. No, but so do you need to decant them? I mean, what's the...
It would probably help.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely help at that point to decant an hour or two before, enjoying that first taste. Or if you can hold off, just wait a couple months and then there it is.
Yeah. And how often do you decant your wines? I mean, that's a good question. I'm just curious.
You know what?
There's a coffee mug decanter to decanter ratio.
Yeah, exactly. So, for me, it's you open the wine, you take a sip, you make an evaluation at that point. What is it tasting like? Is it almost there? Well, then, you know what? Just pouring it into glass is going to be enough.
Right.
Otherwise, for me, what I do is pour it in the pitcher, pour it back in the bottle, and that's usually enough.
Yeah.
If you have lovely decanters,
sure,
they are, they just make it more special, and that works as well.
I would say so many people, decanters are so difficult to clean.
That
all these people
course,
have residue and dust in them. They pour the wine in there, and I'm like, oh gosh.
You're like, ooh.
So I say anything that you regularly pour water in and out of makes a great decanter, And when I'm cooking, with the big mistake is people decant very old wines and then they drink straight out of the bottle the young wines, and it's the young wines that really need the air, and then the old wines tend to decay if you leave them in the decanter for a long time. But with these, you just pour it in an empty water pitcher, straight upside down, and start cooking a steak. And about an hour and a half later, about an hour into it, the whole living room starts to smell like Cabernet. The wine just unlocks.
Did we talk about the 2010?
Well, I was going to, Stephen made some comments I think were really interesting. When, wine is such a different beverage. Beer and so they're all formula. Wine, you get dealt a different hand every year. And one expression I really love is a normal vintage in Napa Valley, and nobody's ever defined
no one
that
knows
for
what
me.
a normal vintage is. Correct.
Because normal people don't get into the wine business.
That's true. That's right.
Now there's a story.
There's a good story.
Well,
That's right.
We have to wrap up, I know, but one of the things I wanted to say, along with sitting with Rachel and Bob is, Rachel, I think you put aside a few cases of the 8 and 9 for anybody that's out there drinking with us, right? Because we've already been in the 10 for a while. So it's always a bloody battle. I always say, Rachel, I will preserve the library. Do not worry. And then I have to calm her with margaritas at our favorite place, Compadres, for a margarita on the deck when I oversell the wines. And so Rachel has saved a little bit of 8 and 9, I believe, at the same price instead of library pricing. And if any of you out there would like some of these wines, the 10 with Greg's steak and even with my cumin infused steak was just, it's incredible how well the young Affinity goes. And for Bob making the wine, what was it, Bob, the first year for Affinity was 93?
93.
93. So gosh, that's a lot of years. And
Amazing.
And
Yeah.
Stephen is the steward of
A
those
great
wines
legacy.
now, and Rachel and Jeff, Roman, who's in the audience tonight, they're responsible for bringing it out to our customers. But it's really cool to sit here and taste this current wine club release. And if I didn't already steal a lot of wine from the company, I would be joining this club.
So my parting word to the club is tasting the 2010. You're gonna love it.
Absolutely.
Ready
It's been
to
delicious
drink,
here tonight.
but it's gonna go another at least 15 years. Believe
Absolutely.
me.
You know, before we sign off, because I think we've got a couple more minutes, Stephen, what is your wine style? I mean, what is it that you've tried to achieve with the 2010 in particular?
Well, you know, at the winery, we have this picture that is up on the wall, and it's a picture of Bob Craig back in 1993 or 94, whenever it might have been, doing the pump overs. And hands, actually, if I may share this, he had his shirt off. And he had his hands in the beam and physically punching down piégeage is what they would call it. Oh yeah, no, it's there, yeah. And so this picture is there, and it just reminds me of Robert Craig, hands-on artisanal winemaking.
Yeah.
That's my guiding focus and my guiding light.
Oh,
And
that's
it's a
beautiful.
picture of Bob
That's beautiful.
when he was making the wines physically, and that's what we do, hands-on. It's all hands-on winemaking, small, artisanal. We do the best that we can to highlight the best that Bob has to offer with his vineyard here in Affinity, as well as the Viter that the Nuss family farms, as well as our estate vineyard up there in Howell Mountain and the Spring Mountain that we also produce. So yeah.
And Bob, why do you find the 2010 vintage exceptional?
I just really love the way it all comes together. I really love the wine. It flows, what you get in the aromas, you get in the flavors. And it's really a beautiful wine because it has real strong Cabernet character.
Yeah.
It has such a nice pouch. And
beautiful.
Tasting the wine makes me want that steak.
There's so much steak over here next to me.
You are between Bob and that
Here,
steak.
I'll get you a piece.
So be sure the camera's off before we attack the steak. That's going to be ugly.
So how do people, what do they need to do to get this next shipment? Is there anything special or anything they need to know?
Actually, no, the club release is scheduled for pretty much 3.5 weeks from now, and all you need to do is just have the credit cards updated. Make sure you're there to sign for the wine. You know, wine still needs to be signed for, but yeah, it'll be the 2010 Affinity and the 2010 Mount Beater going out. But hopefully, if you've tasted through these two other prior vintages, you're on your way. It's, I think Stephen mentioned before, it's the Affinity. No doubt about it, in all three glasses.
Yeah, yeah, you can just see the lineage.
Excellent. Any favorites?
Well, I love them all, but I have to say this 10, that 8 was so savage on me that, but it's beautiful.
History and experience, right?
Before we end, I have to say Stephen spoke about Bob's guiding principle, and I think we have to talk about the real guiding principle of Bob Craig, which is, and Lynn, that you're not allowed to speak at a higher volume until after your second martini. That's really what guides our company. and that will always precede a steak.
I have a question here. I would like to
This is Didier Lousteau, everyone.
Hello, good evening. I would like to know a little bit how you guys get to know each other, and and Bob, how you came up to meet with Elton and how you decide, you find out that Elton was the man ready to run all the operation now, and how you came up on board and what was the story beyond that. It's got to be something, isn't it? And Rachel, you've been there for how many years?
Almost 10.
10 years. So, maybe like a
Elton,
little,
9 years.
maybe some anecdotes, maybe a little stories that you guys want to share with us. That would be great.
There's lots of great stories. Which one should we share?
We all have to be employed later at some point.
We have to be careful with the stories.
That's really interesting for Elton. We had someone selling the wines who wasn't doing a very good job, frankly. And, it was really interesting because when I first got into the wine business, I had a degree in marketing, and I tried to get a job in the wine business, and they said, well, first of all the good jobs belong to family members. Second, we sell all the wine we make, so we don't need any marketing. That's a time capsule comment, because now marketing is equally as important as the wine making. But so we weren't selling wines very well, and we hired this consultant, and she kept saying, well, what you really need is someone like Elton Slone, who will go out and sell the wines and do a great job selling them. So she said that enough. I finally said, well, why don't you ask Elton if he'd consider it? And he came over, tasted the wines, and
And the rest is history.
Exactly. Even though Bob and Lynn are egomaniacs and really tough to get along with.
We can tell. Very
somehow
Wait a
made it
minute.
happen.
Wonderful. Well, thanks, you guys. This has been incredible. Was there another story you wanted to ask?
No, I was just
Sorry.
going to say, and then we told the story of Stephen was the 8 vintage, so I know we're ending up, but our truck ended its life just south of the company gate right before harvest, along with the career of the Ben winemaker. But so we struggled along with the office crew over that year, and then Stephen came along in 2009, and the wines, his knowledge of the vineyard and the wines has been revelatory. And Rachel has just grown the business. When I started, I think you've grown the business 200%, but praise is your raise. Praise is your raise. Good job. Good job. Along with Jeff and T, of course, but we really have a great time at the company, and it's all from Bob and Lynn's foundation of, it's all about life, love, and happiness, and a little sprinkle of Cabernet in there.
and a steak occasionally.
And a steak, of course. Yes.
Keep that voice down until the second martini.
And DDA, margaritas on the deck at Compadres, helps keep us together. That truly is. Or bowling at the bowling alley in town.
I love how they bond. It's a beautiful thing.
Oh, yeah.
It seems to me this is like really a family and friend, and run a very tight operation.
Yeah.
Very tight.
And is there a culture beyond that? I mean, how you guys are really, making things forward
Well, it's a startup. Everybody's participating in moving the business to the place where they can have the time off they want, the income they want. And Bob and Lynn laid the foundation, and so now we're the stewards of the company, and we're responsible for keeping it going. And you always think, what would I like to be doing if I were employed by somebody? So you have to do the business. The number has to be there, but it's really been a lot of fun. You guys are a great group of people, so I seldom say that.
And it's all about, having skin in the game too.
Absolutely.
Being involved. I mean, we're a small company, and being a startup, it's like that. It's like we rely on each other.
Another part of it for me, all these years through, is I visit a lot of wineries in Napa Valley, and there aren't many wineries where I can say I love the wines the whole way through, from the white to the rosé to whatever cabs, through the whole lineup. And I always internally said to myself, as soon as our wines stop doing that, I'm out of here. So
she's still here.
I'm still here. And it's just like from our Durrell Vineyard Chardonnay to the rosé, the $21 rosé, all the way up to, our $80 Howell Mountain Cab. Every year, the consistency is just there. And that beautiful beginning, middle, and finish. Yeah. It's beautifully balanced, luscious wine.
Well, on that note, would you pair any of those bottlings with a steak as well as what we tasted here tonight? I know we talked primarily about Affinity.
The Zinfandel, we have a Howell Mountain Zin that would... Yeah.
Yeah. It's got this pepper spice.
Yeah.
Let's
face
really
it.
have to get one of those and bring it back.
When you roll in at 11 o'clock at night after a big tasting, if there's some steak in the fridge and whatever's there is the perfect pairing.
Is all the wines available to retail, or there is some wine that are just available at the winery only, and you just for the members and as a thank you, and because the production is so small and.
Both. So Spring Mountain available just at the tasting room, and Rosé,
No, the club. The Spring Mountain is just the club.
Chardonnay, Zinfandel as well. The club gets the first option, very, very small amount of retail. And then Howell Mountain and Mount Veeder, it's really been the retail partners that have been with us for a number of years that continue to get the wines, because right now we're at the pressure point where we have to have a waiting list for the club because we don't have enough wine to even fill what's coming in that. So, and believe me, when I put that in the letter, I got some choice emails from people saying, "You're cutting my allocation." I can tell you, but it's so it's better than having a warehouse full of wine, but it's frustrating. I mean, these vineyard sites, for a small winery like us, we don't have a limited pocketbook in the price of grapes when it's $9,000 a ton everywhere. So we're fighting to move it forward. Fortunately, knock on wood, the business is good, but you have to get up every morning and get the shovel in the ground.
Sure.
But to answer your question, yes, there are wines. Most of the wines now are harder and harder to come by in the national market. With Spring Mountain, Rosé, going particularly to just the wine club.
What is I like to collect wine. I have like a pretty nice collection, let's say. But I love big bottles. I mean, I just really enjoy big size. What is the biggest size you guys are doing at the winery? What is available to members or?
Well, we do very few anymore, because I'm so glad you're saying this in front of Stephen, because he always fights me on the bottling line. He's like, "God, do we have to do that?"
Do the big
now,
format?
if you hit Bob on the head pretty good, he will probably bleed a beautiful glass. I mean, Bob's a Nebuchadnezzar ×2 or something. But no, we do a tremendous amount of grape 3 liters. But very, very limited 6 liters, and only in really what we consider to be really, age-worthy vintages.
Terrific. Good. Well, thanks, you guys. This is an amazing opportunity. Some beautiful wines, the Affinity wines. Make sure you get your 2010, right, when it becomes available. Don't miss out. And
what's the website?
Yes, what's the website?
www.robertcraigwine.com.
And is this also where they go if they would like to visit?
Yes. We have a tasting room tab that shows pictures of the tasting room, map on how to find it, and phone numbers, emails. We're very accessible. We have a beautiful tasting room right attached to our office. If you call Jeff at 707-252-2250, extension 1, he might be able to schedule a tasting for you, special, up at the Howell Mountain Winery, Thursdays, Fridays, or Saturdays.
Or Tia. And if anybody's watching this, all you have to say is, I saw you on Toot Sweet, and we'll waive the $20 a person tasting fee. So just say Toot Sweet, or you can say, I know Elton or Stephen or Rachel or Bob, and we never know if they do. So, so we'll waive that for you there too.
Yes.
But, they're watching. This is a good opportunity.
And if you just come to the Napa Valley and you're not sure, call us. We have a really long time requirement for tasting. Usually it's between 5 and 7 minutes.
That's right.
I don't know if I can wait that long, but
I
luckily
know.
we don't have to.
And well done, Toot Sweet. So thanks to Didier and
much.
Susan and you, Tia. This has been a lot of fun.
Yes, thank you. Cheers.
To the 2010.
And here's to the Robert Craig 2010 Affinity. Absolutely. Cheers. Thank you. Excellent.